Hello and welcome to NewsX World. For this very special interview, I am joined by Hugh Duggan.
Hello and welcome viewers, I'm Pia and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. US President Donald Trump has stated that Israel has agreed to the initial withdrawal line and that Hamas's agreement will also trigger an immediate ceasefire and pave the path to the return of the hostages and prisoners by both sides. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has warned that the demilitarization of Gaza will happen either by Trump's plan or by Israel's military after agreeing to the withdrawal proposal. The activists detained by Israel from the global Sumud flotilla who have now been released have alleged severe mistreatment in Israeli custody, particularly with Swedish activist Greta Thunberg. Syria is holding its first parliamentary elections 10 months after rebel groups led by Ahmed al-Shara, the current president, overthrew Bashar al-Assad to end a brutal civil war. The election is not being held across the entire country, with provinces like Sweda, Raqqa and Hassak excluded. Billionaire Andrej Babis's populist ANO party has taken a commanding lead in the Czech Republic's parliamentary election but is on track to fall short of a majority. With ballots from more than 97% of polling stations counted, ANO had 35% of the votes secured. Typhoon Matmo is strengthening ahead of its landfall in China, prompting the government to evacuate 150,000 people from southern Guangdong province. The storm had sustained maximum wind speeds of 151 kilometers per hour, according to China's National Meteorological Center. It is expected to make landfall midday. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has stated that Pyongyang has allocated strategic assets to respond to the buildup of US military forces in South Korea and has vowed to develop additional military measures. Blasts were heard around Gaza with smoke plumes spotted in several places as American President Donald Trump is urging Israel to scale back operations in the Palestinian territory. All right, viewers, those are the headlines and our top focus. Russia launched a late-night attack on Ukraine's southeastern city of Zaporizhia, killing one person and injuring 9 others. Now, the head of the Zaporizhia Regional Military Administration, Ivan Fedorov, has posted a video on his Telegram channel showcasing burnt vehicles and damaged buildings. Fedorov also claimed that the strikes took place late last night. Meanwhile, NATO member Poland has stated that it scrambled aircrafts early this morning to ensure its air safety after Russia launched airstrikes on Ukraine. With Ukrainian officials also reporting missiles and drones raining down on the Lviv region near the Polish border. That is not all that has taken place. We also know that 30 were injured after a Kiev-bound passenger train was struck in a savage attack yesterday itself. The bombardment against Ukraine continues. With us on the broadcast is Mr. Glenn Grant, former advisor to the Ukrainian Defense Minister, joining us from Kiev. At the outset, I would like to know, are your family members safe at the moment? Because the barrage is continuing. Civilians are also still losing their lives.
Yeah, yes, thank you. I'm fine. I'm actually outside the country for the moment, although due to go back in. And it is particularly worrying, especially the train attack, because trains have been running at night, have been almost the part of the main artery of movement inside Ukraine, and in fact that train going to Sumy I've used myself. So and that particular attack was nasty because they didn't just attack the train, they attacked twice. So actually what they were trying to do was first of all destroy the station and the train, and then secondly attack the emergency services when they went to actually to clear things up afterwards. And this is a typical Russian way of doing to get extra casualties. But yeah, thank you.
Indeed, and sir, what's also interesting is that the targeting of natural gas facilities are also taking place in Ukraine. How will this impact the Ukrainian economy in the long run?
It will. I mean, it's inevitable. I mean, it's more, in many ways, the attacks on the energy systems are much more towards causing great grief and distress to people when they can't get light and they don't have heating. I was in Sumy year before last after an attack on the energy system there, and the place was just completely black. I mean, no light anywhere. So there's nothing in windows, no street lights, no traffic lights, no anything. Just absolutely total blackness in the city. And this is what Russia is aiming for. And that blackness, of course, means no heating for the majority of people. So I expect a lot more of this to happen in the coming weeks.
Indeed, and interestingly, there was a statement made by Tusk earlier itself. He stated that if Ukraine loses, we will all fail. Meanwhile, Poland has scrambled aircrafts even as this recent strike has taken place. But are these statements enough? What else should NATO be doing at the moment rather than just giving statements?
That's a good question. I mean, I think the big thing is that NATO as a whole has actually got to sit down and work out how it's actually going to fight Russia, because when you're just on defense, then the initiative is with Russia, and you can see this with the Russian drones going everywhere. Is that NATO is just not prepared for it as an organization, because the individual countries are not prepared for it either. I mean, Germany's waking up. Denmark obviously has woken up. Poland is waking up and was putting aircraft in the sky last night. But you can't afford to keep putting aircraft in the sky just for drones. It's too expensive. It just eats up the hours of the aircraft, and you end up with no aircraft to fly because they're burnt out. So there's got to be some rethinking by NATO about how it deals with this whole Russia thing, because what they're doing at the moment, they can claim loudly, yes, we're doing a great job, but so is Russia, and it's Russia that's causing the problems to the countries with impunity at the moment.
Indeed, sir. I request you to stay on with us as we're tracking further information, this time from the Czech Republic. Now, billionaire Andrej Babis is set to hold talks with the Czech president and elected party chiefs after his populist movement has toppled a national vote. Now, Babis is expected to meet President Petr Pavel, who will now swear him in as the next prime minister under the constitution. He has stated that he will provide a solution in line with Czech and European laws of forming a government, and his inner party meanwhile has failed to get an outright majority, securing 35% of the vote share. Therefore, he is expected to form a minority government in coalition with the country's far right. Meanwhile, outgoing Czech Prime Minister Petr Fiala has stated that he would continue to keep the Czech Republic a part of the West and that he will not give up the fight against populism and extremism. Still with us on the broadcast is Mr. Glenn Grant. So, interesting development coming in from the Czech Republic. What do you make of the victory of Andrej Babis and now the coalition that he's likely to form with right-wing parties, the protectionist stance that we're seeing that a lot of European leaders are now adopting as well?
This is worrying. It's a really worrying development, and it should worry the whole of Europe. I mean, in the first place, this man has got a very dark past, and Slovakian courts have actually said that he was previously a member of the Czech Communist Secret Service. He's been finance minister and he's been prime minister before, and basically during that time he was mired in scandal for fraud. Working with the media to try and deal with the opposition in the way that Trump does, and several other things. And in fact, there's still at least one case about misuse of European Union money that's still open. But the wider thing is that across Europe, it's becoming quite clear that we can't trust elections anymore. That the people that we see, a lot of people that we see, are in fact either working for Russia or working alongside the Russian idea of taking over governments and abusing the public, not working for the public, but actually using everything to make themselves richer. This man is rich already. He's worth $3.5 billion. He doesn't need the money. So the only thing that he's after is power. It's certainly not looking after society. So I think we should all be worried about this because it foretells what will happen in other countries. Hungary we've had already.
Indeed, and and what are the implications at large for Ukraine and support that Ukraine requires? Because we've seen, certain countries, including Hungary as well, try to block aid earlier. There have been discussions of a fresh package being granted by the EU to Ukraine, but it's been stalled for a long time now, and Hungary was one of the key countries that had stopped and stalled the vote regarding this. And now with the Czech Republic also gaining someone who's more protectionist in stance, more pro-Russia in stance, how is that going to impact the support that Ukraine receives from the EU?
Well, time will tell, but this man when he's asked about Ukraine, he's not positive. He uses weaselly worded answers like, well, I'm a diplomat, I'm not interested in this, this is a military activity, which is extremely worrying. The Czech public are extremely positive about supporting Ukraine because they know that they're right on the borderline and that they will be one of the next people to suffer if Ukraine falls. But I think that this can be considered to be a success for Putin again. But we just have to wait and see. But if it does come up again, it's going to make life a lot harder for the European Union to actually put money into Ukraine. It's hard enough as it is at the moment. I mean, they're failing time and time again. This could actually be a real death knell.
All right, so with that, I would like to thank you for taking out time, sharing your perspective with us on NewsX World. With that, viewers, we're shifting our focus away from Europe towards East Asia. Now, we're learning that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has announced that Pyongyang has allocated strategic assets to counter the U.S. military buildup in South Korea and has promised to develop additional military measures. In fact, Kim Jong-un has stated that as U.S. forces in South Korea increase, North Korea's strategic interests in the region have grown as well, leading to the allocation of special assets to key targets. Kim has warned that enemies should be concerned about changes in their security environment. He has further added that North Korea will undoubtedly develop further military measures to respond to the build-up by U.S. forces without providing any further details. Kim has also, now recently attended a military parade in Beijing, marking the 80th anniversary of the end of the Second World War. He was seen alongside Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin. We do know that North Korea is also helping Russia in its war efforts in Ukraine as well, sending troops to Ukraine. And in response to recent drills we've seen in the Indo-Pacific region between US, Japan and South Korea, as well as bilateral military drills between Seoul and Washington, the Operation Ulchi Shield, and calls for disarmament, Kim Jong-un has doubled down, stating that North Korea will not heed what exactly the U.S. administration's demands are. They will continue with their nuclearization program and bid, calling it a deterrent against U.S. presence in the region. Of course, the balance of power is glaringly obvious in this particular case, but North Korea once again making it very clear, despite efforts being made by South Korean President Lee Jae-myung to extend an olive branch that has been rebuffed time and again. In fact, Lee Jae-myung had recently met Donald Trump at the White House, where they discussed the possibility of a meeting happening between Trump and Kim Jong-un. But up until now, nothing is clear regarding that as well. And Pyongyang has now doubled down, stating that it will allocate strategic assets to counter U.S. military buildup in South Korea. With us on the broadcast is Major General Gigi Dwivedi, a geopolitical and strategic expert, joining us live from New Delhi. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. A fresh statement coming in from Kim Jong-un. Once again, he has reaffirmed that North Korea will not abandon its nuclearization program. It will not heed calls of disarmament, and they will allocate strategic assets to counter U.S. presence. This comes in the aftermath of recent drills. We've seen trilateral drills between Japan, South Korea and the United States in the region. Where do you think the tensions in the Korean Peninsula are headed to next?
Well, Pia, firstly, thank you for having me on your show. Well, Korean Peninsula remains a flashpoint, and primarily because it's a contest between the China, North Korea, Russia for domination of the peninsula, and on the other side, of course, America, South Korea, Japan. Now, this is how the strategic, architecture or the strategic balance is on the Korean Peninsula. Now, North Korea remains very sensitive to any South Korean either military moves or American presence in South Korea. Incidentally, America has about 28,500 troops, and I happen to have served as defense attaché in North Korea, so I have fairly good perception on the ground. Now, what are the major assets of North Korea? North Korea, major asset, firstly, it has a very strong land forces, almost about 1 million strong, and about another 6 million reservists. Second point is a nuclear capability. Right now, North Korea has about 50 warheads, and it has enough fissile material to manufacture another 90. So that is one asset. Secondly, North Korea has very strong capability in terms of the missiles. When I was there, the missiles were basically Nodong series. Now they have Hwasong series, and the latest missile, Hwasong 20, has the range of about 15,000 kilometers. It's a solid fuel missile with multiple warheads capability. That means it can strike the American, landmass or the America as such, any part of America. Now, this is where the tension actually increase, or tension, there's the accretion in tension because moment there is some kind of presence of American forces in this region which is already there, and when they carry out such drills and exercises, as a pattern, North Korea always respond. It was always, even his father, Kim Jong-il, did the same thing, and he is continuing the same tactics. It is basically a show of force, basically intimidation. And you rightly said, the current Prime President of South Korea, Lee Jae-myung, he has adopted a very dovish approach, reconciliatory approach, but that has not worked. And my last point is, President Trump tried to befriend Kim Jong-un. He met him in Singapore, he met him in Vietnam, and also he met him on the DMZ.
Yes.
But somehow Kim Jong-un has not responded favorably, and he continues to manifest or show his hostile and bellicosity approach. Yeah.
Indeed, speaking of Donald Trump, we'd recently seen, crucial meeting at the Oval Office between Lee Jae-myung and Trump. And Trump was, of course, referring to the possibility of meeting Kim Jong-un again. Meanwhile, North Korea has drawn a clear red line. They've stated that a meeting could be on the cards, but only if their nukes are a subject that is not breached, that is not brought up in the discussions. Do you think such a meeting could catalyze?
Well, the American effort has always been to denuclearize North Korea. But as I said, the nuclear weapons are the North Korean greatest asset, and that's a deterrence against America. So therefore, I don't think ever the North Korea is going to, abandon its nuclear program, or the other is going to only increase its nuclear capability. As I said, they have about 50 nuclear warheads, and they have the capability to increase by another 90 because they have enough enriched uranium. The second point is when Kim Jong-un, if at all, meets President Trump, he would only raise the issue of American troops on the Korean Peninsula, the American exercises, the American, at times, provocative attitude. All this will come, but I don't think the nuclear issue is going to be on the table because that is non-negotiable. And secondly, also, the missile capability of North Korea, that is the asset. And incidentally, North Korea has lately, in the Ukraine war, sent about 12,000 troops. And they also suffered 1,000 fatal casualties. So this adds another angle on the Korean Peninsula. That is, if Kim Jong-un can go all the way to Europe to fight for Russia, well, they will be always at beck and call of China in case anything emerges or anything manifests in the Western Pacific. Pia.
All right, so with that, I would like to thank you for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. Shifting focus to news coming in from Peru, hundreds of Peruvians have marched in Lima to protest against President Dina Boluarte's government, expressing discontent over pension reforms, corruption, and economic insecurity, as well as rising crime. The demonstration has seen mostly young protesters rallying outside the Congress of the Republic, displaying banners and signs denouncing criminality, extortion and violence across the country. Recent weeks have in fact witnessed similar marches joined by transport and merchant unions, with some protests escalating into clashes with riot police. Discontent has grown over corruption allegations, worsening economic conditions and frustration regarding accountability for the deaths of dozens of protesters who were killed by security forces following Boluarte's rise to power in late 2022. Listen in to what some of the protesters have had to say.
Los jóvenes están pidiendo seguridad, justicia. Realmente no nos sentimos protegidos. Tememos algún día salir y no volver. Son nuestros padres los que nos esperan en casa.
Venimos a apoyar a los jóvenes y también venimos a apoyar a los transportistas para que pare este nivel de inseguridad que ellos están viviendo, ¿no? Muerte tras muerte y el Estado no hace nada. Y encima se descubre de que no solamente tienen al sicariato encima, sino también la misma policía les pide cupo. Eso es increíble.
All right, viewers, there of course you've heard what the protesters in Peru have had to say. Meanwhile, we're shifting focus to Southeast Asia, particularly Indonesia. Now, Indonesia has reinstated TikTok's local operating license after the social media platform submitted data requested by authorities regarding recent protests. The ministry had stated that it temporarily suspended the app's operating license for failing to provide adequate data on its live features activities during anti-government protests in August. TikTok, owned by China's ByteDance, has over 100 million users in Indonesia, the country with the platform's second largest audience. Indonesia's action is taking place amid a growing regional trend of governments demanding stricter accountability from major social media platforms over data use, monetization and content control, of course. With that, viewers, it's a wrap on this bulletin. More news and updates on the other side. Stay tuned on NewsX World. We'll be back after a quick short break.